Thank you for joining another discussions about artificial intelligence and the future of artificial intelligence in 2025. Uh, 2023, 2024 has been very exciting for AI space, but that doesn't necessarily mean things will stay the same. That doesn't necessarily mean things will, sort of die down. What I believe, and I'm calculating that we will find the actual value of artificial intelligence and machine learning for the purposes of actual use cases, actually what's been promised, and actually the step that will become very visible and clear for us to understand where it is that we implement AI and where it is that we will find the most values in. For the last 2 years, it really has been a struggle to find actual enterprise level value, actual business value that is interoperable, scalable, and sustainable, right? So when we discuss artificial intelligence and machine learning, of course, there's a need for us to understand data, understand the data processing, and understand these use cases, how the data processing and data is being utilized in a responsible and governance. The governance is being conducted properly. Next year, we will have so many more use cases that will come up front that we really have to think through and dig deep into the data processing and where the data is generated from and say responsible AI and governance of this AI, XAI, which is explainable AI, the trisk of it, right? The TRISM, which is the trust and risk. Um, how do we address all these concerns, right? Do we start from that concern or do we start from the use case? Because use case wise, you have many options today and you'll have many more tomorrow. And of course, one of the best ones you will see next year as an option is AI agent. And this AI agent will really, really challenge you to understand your business process from a new and different perspective. What's possible? What's not possible? What is the strength that you have? What are the opportunities? What are some of the threats and what are some of the weaknesses? And this is not even analysis of the pastel so far, just a SWOT analysis. Business impact wise, we will have lots of these understanding of, okay, if we have to use a tool today, how do we develop our own tool? Are we buyers? Are we users? Or are we just kind of looking at it from the sideways, say, let us deflect it as long as we can because we're not ready to jump in yet. And that's okay because not everybody should jump into the AI space. And there's a need for those individuals or those organizations to deflect those AIs away from them. So that way it's not a cybersecurity threat for them because AI and cybersecurity threats are just synonymous at this point. We'll really have to dig deep into that for our business impact analysis purposes. But if you're not deflecting, but you're using or you're buying, let me take that back. It's developing and buying, right? Either you develop one in-house or you buy one, right? And buy means you're just paying for it, subscription to it, renting it. But you buy it, but you don't own it, right? So development means you own top to bottom everything. Whereas if you buy it, you're pretty much saying you don't own anything. Whatever the data is being processed is being processed somewhere else. So this AI agent conversation is going to be major part of your discussions in 2025. So last week when we discussed artificial intelligence, we talked about known mainly, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. With these sort of exploration of what it is that we have in our inventory, what are some of the business processes that we do present, and what are some of the things that we will do in the future, and how do we use the data from the past to enable us to do business process and business workflow in the future. It all comes down to having the right people in place, the right process, and the best technologies, as in that growing technology, the pipeline into the technology. And complications, we talked about these data, where they're coming from, just a quick understanding of the strategy behind it, right? Logistics of it, right? If we have to really think through the process, how do we make sure that we're buying into a process that is interoperable, scalable, and sustainable? When we discuss AI, we want to discuss AI with minimal amount of technological terms, right? But there's one that is hard to separate from technological things, as in like data processing, and data use cases. This is called a pick up and drop off, right? But it's my favorite one because it's really exclusively being used in certain industries, which is super technical, right? Pick up and drop off makes sense to every activities that we have going on around us at all times. It's our human ontology, right? It's a standard operating procedures for every single activities that we do as a person or as a human or as an individual or as an organization. It just comes down to pick up and drop off, right? Um, I love discussing AI machine learning from pick up and drop off scenarios because it just makes everything so easily relatable, right? There is no technological difficulties here. It's just a matter of understanding what's being picked up and what's being dropped off, right? So you can think about it from an airline perspective. You can think about it from your Lyft perspective. You can think about it from any perspective as you imagine it to, and you can make pick up and drop off scenarios work for you. So when we discussed pick up and drop off last week, we kind of like went over it, but mainly what we wanted to talk about is that we are expanding your know-hows and understanding and inventorying, sort of listing some of the things that are very unknown to you. How unknown is it to you? Let's list it out, right? Understand what it is that you know and understand what it is that you will need to know in order to get comfortable with the unknowns. So pick up and drop off, like I said, is a very rarely used terminology for data processing purposes instead of chips, right? Instead of how the data is processed. When it comes to the system, it's the ability of users to experience these pickup and drop off and the latency, like how fast is that pickup and drop off? How well was that pickup and drop off processed? How simultaneous was it that it never glitched, right? So if you're a user and you have a user interface and you're experiencing ChatGPT, it is super fast. And you see Claude and you say, wow, that's even faster. And then you look at ChatGPT and you say, ChatGPT is good. And you look at Claude and you say, like, wow, Claude actually gets me, right? And then you look at Perplexity and you're like, oh, wow, Perplexity is just doing a whole nother set of things, but it's doing pretty good at it, right? What you're experiencing as a user is this ability of pick up and drop off. And this pick up and drop off has to be simultaneously with zero latency, no delays, always better, always faster, but it's also very cheap to do this pickup and drop off. So just because we talk about pickup and drop off today doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have to unpack everything inside of pickup and drop off. But based on your questions, we will be able to answer what does it mean pickup and drop off in your use case specifically. Because every specific use case, they all just have data, and this data have to be picked up somewhere and processed somewhere else. And once it's processed, what happens next is up to your imagination. And that's how we make it work. That's how we justify, your pickup and drop off. So we will talk more about pickup and drop off with AI agents specifically. An AI agent is a topic of today's discussion, but we will talk more about AI agents because this will this AI agent piece will be one of the core component of all things AI is going forward, right? AI agent, think of it as a glue that puts all the other AIs into a single ecosystem and creates an ecosystem of all AIs. So again, last week we talked about some of the stuff like you see ChatGPT and you get just mind blown by the fact that this system that OpenAI has created, or you look at Claude, which was developed by Anthropics, you say, "Wow, this is mind blowing." But what else is out there, right? And this is what that what's out there discussion is, right? What's next, right? How do we use ChatGPT today, and how are we going to use ChatGPT in the future? And what are some of the you know possibilities, like the art of possibilities? What are some of the business use cases that we really can tap into with ChatGPT, Claude, or what are the systems that we do have, right? So there's a whole forest of AI possibilities out there, but the trees are very distracting. So don't miss the forest for the tree, is the conversation here. But let's move into the pickup and drop off of physical world and AI agents specifically. AI agent is a very much labeled or named for specific purposes, right? Because it's an agent, sort of like a concierge, right? But it's working on your behalf. And if it's working on your behalf, what will it enable you to do is up to you to decide what it is that you want to get done. So I'll give you a perfect example of it. Back in 2023, uh, ChatGPT came out, and ChatGPT was sort of improving on its coding capabilities. For me to ever think of like I have to really get a whole lot of hours in to clean up my desktop, clean up my computers that I'm continuously using, or even trying to figure out like how to automate things inside of my computer has always been such a time-consuming task that it just made sense that if I have to do anything, just get it done inside of a browser, get it done inside of my mail inbox, and just stick to what takes the least amount of time. Because in order for me to interact with my web browser means I have to use my keyboard, my mouse, and click on task and do multiple tasks all inside of a browser. And if I can get all of these done inside of a browser, that means my task has been contained inside of a single browser, right? Internet browser, Edge, Google browser, or if somebody uses Firefox or Mozilla and things of that nature. Um, this browsers can pretty much handle most of our tasks. And what's inside the desktop, if I allow the browser to interact with my desktop or my laptop, it will actually be able to pull information in and handle those tasks for me. So this is important, right? So where does pickup and drop off come in? Every time you click your mouse, or every time you click the keyboard to enter a alphabet or letter, you have a pickup and drop off that's happening, right? That's happening because you give it instruction, and then that pickup and then drop off needs to happen with zero latency, right? It has to happen really fast, and it has to happen where it makes sense. It cannot just do other things. It has to do what it is that you ask it to do. So when you have these tasks where you have to click and you have to write things and you have to move your mouse around, what if you do it repeatably, right? What if you do it redundantly? What if you do it in a way that it's not even productive? It's just busy work, right? It has no value to it, but you still do it. Um, what if there was a system, and Microsoft calls it recall, but there's other systems that are available. What if there was a system that was tracking all your mouse clicks, all your activities in your laptop, and was keeping tabs of what it is that you do all the time, and it learns on a day-to-day basis what it is that you are working on? What if it could automate all of that? What if you had an agent that you could speak using your preferred language? Mine being English. I will type in English that, hey, I do this task and I am just done doing it. I don't want to do it anymore. You have to do it from now on. And if you run into any trouble, you let me know. What if you had an agent that was able to take that instructions and was able to execute on that? So what it did, it's picking up an order from me and dropping it off wherever it needs to go, and doing more pickup and drop off, as in within the laptop or somewhere out on the internet. right? Somewhere in the data centers, where it's taking my instructions and is able to execute on those instructions step by step by step, pick up and drop off, right? It picks it up from you, drops it off to the computer, and the computer says, well, I got the instructions. I'll pick it up and I'll drop it off over here. I drop it off over here, wherever that is, right? And we can pack all this pick up and drop off as we go. But the point is, if it's happening inside of your browser, if it's happening inside of your laptop, that is a very, very powerful scenario that we are moving into in coming years. Because if you think about amount of hours that we waste by doing things, by clicking, by moving the mouses around, or trying to visualize information, but the information is not in front of us available. What if that is the scenario for next 20, 30 years? That's not sustainable. That's a really like anti-productive sort of scenario, right? It's just a lot of busy work. So the world we're moving into, the laptops that we will have in the coming years and decades, is ready to shift dramatically, because some of the powers that we have inside of our chips, inside of our laptop, we're not even fully utilizing it, right? So we really have to think about better ways to interact with these chips, better ways to interact with this hardwares that is in front of us, by understanding the tasks that we do and having those tasks automated, so that way we save more times in our day, right? Now, is there a lot of privacy concerns? Is there a lot of security concerns and safety concerns? There's tons of these, right? But this AI agent, which, like I said, it's been labeled sort of with the intention of mind to capture your imagination, right? But once you see how it actually executes the work, you will see the benefit of it, right? The benefit of AI agent is that you are no longer in need of coding. You are no longer in need of coding up to a certain point. The reason we haven't had technological development that was out of control, way beyond our imagination, is because how expensive it was to code, and how expensive it is to hire somebody to code, and how expensive it is to maintain that code. With AI agent, which is low code, no code solutions, incorporated with the low code, no code solutions, you have a possibility that in the future, where just by communicating in the preferred language, you are able to tell a system, write this code and execute on that code and see what will come out of it. And if it does, that means you have done what I asked you to do, which is the instruction you give it. So let's say, for example, you write down that I need to send an email to this person at this time for this purposes. It's not that hard to write codes to say, do this, then do this, right? But like the actual statement of it is that if then this, but if then else statement becomes the next level of coding, right? Because if this didn't work, try something else. But don't bother me by telling me it didn't work. Just try something else and see what happens. And if it meets the instruction that I gave you, come back and tell me it worked. So you're automating, but you're automating without writing the code. You are using your language to give the instruction. So for the coding that you and me are probably not thinking about writing 24 hours a day, because it takes a long time to code, and it takes a long time to be proficient in coding, learn programming languages, go to boot camps, and do it for long enough that you can be proficient in coding. But even with the proficient coding, we don't have the infrastructure to execute that coding, right? Execute that programming language to do the task that we want to get done. These are powerful tools that we will interact with in the next 12 months, right? Because you've seen a lot of these, discussions around prompt engineering, prompt this and that, prompt this purposes or whatever. What do we do with the prompt next is we prompt it to give an instruction to an AI agent to say, I need this task done. This is how I've done it before. Learn from it and do it better. Optimize it, right? This is how I do my AI agent, my daily activities. learn from it, do it this way, so that way I can have some time away from what it is that I'm so accustomed to doing. Now I'm going to figure out something else to do, right? It's as much as it sounds liberating, there's a lot of responsibility with it. As much as it fascinates me, I find it to be a task that we have to work our way through, because it's going to go through the same life cycle of things that we've discussed last week, which was that ML ops, right? But we'll get to that in a little bit. But we really have to work our way into a place where we are comfortable with this AI agent, rather than think that it will just be delivered and then it will just work. It will work up to a certain point. It's still going to maintain that rule of 80-20, where 80% will be delivered to you. But the reason it will have lots of these latency, or a lot of these glitches, is because that 20% has to be done by each individual and each one of us, right? It's an 80-20 rule. It's always going to stay, where somebody's going to give you a capability, but you have to make it your intentions and use 20% to capture the full opportunity of that capability. So there's these conversations, as it unfolds, we will have uh, we will have to go through the MLOps processing, right? The MLOps is machine learning operations. There's AI ops, which is artificial intelligence operations. They all have a process of model development, experimentation, model version, lifecycle management. As you go through these keywords here, what you will see is your ability to understand these will play into how it is that AI agent that you have inside of your computer, you have inside of your workflow, you have it inside of your organizational systems. The systems will enable you to do your work with far more proficiency, optimize it over time. But if you see the efficiency on day one, you don't necessarily get that same efficiency on day 3, day 4, and day 5, right? So you'll have to troubleshoot it. You'll have to understand one of these pieces, which is the monitoring and maintenance of it. It works day one just fine, because it has a brand new set of data, and that brand new set of data is what it specialized on, it trained on. But day 4, 5, or day 40 or 50, things starts shifting a little bit to the left, where you're not feeling so well about how the data is performing or the system is performing. Oh, all right. Not the best use of laptop right now, but I'm trying my best. All right. If you are thinking about automation or orchestration of this single AI agent that works well for you, how do you make it interoperable? How do you make it scalable and sustainable, right? It goes back to that low code, no coding, right? It's a matter of understanding what is an AI agent capable of, and how is that AI agent developing its capability over time, rather than sticking to what it is that was delivered with, right? So when you're thinking about automation and orchestration, there's a lot of systems that has good automation, but it requires lots of work in order to make it scalable, right? So it has a sustainability piece to it, right? It's always is sustaining. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It always does it without a glitch. But in order for it to interact with the other system and have it scale to do more than what it was originally intended for, it's the scalability piece and the interoperability piece, right? So if you think about an AI agent, all of a sudden you have a different version of that. What you are able to do is write codes based on the prompt, right? You give it some prompt and say, I have this solution that works wonder, right? It works like magic, sustained all the time, right? But I would like to scale it. But in order for me to scale it with these other systems that I have and have it communicate, how can I use AI agents, right? and how can I make more of these interoperability happen, and what sort of infrastructures do I need in order to make this pipeline work? That, I think, is the most powerful part of an enterprise or any business, to understand that there's a workflow, and that workflow could work with other workflow. We do this all the time at this day and age, right? But it's just changing. It's dramatically changing to a point that we will have to think outside of the box and say, what else can be done? What else can we do without interrupting what works so well, yet we can work our way into that because we are able to create an ecosystem that comes from outside and work its way inside. That power is something that was almost unheard of, right? And unheard of because, going back to that discussion about, if you don't know how to code, it takes a lot to code, and it takes a lot of capital, financial capital, human capital, and the problem of your OpEx, right? How do you pay for these things to maintain itself? Um, if you had an AI agent solutions today that you're working from outside and in, you will be able to see how, without really paying for this much coding, without paying for this infrastructure, and the system that you can try it out, see how it reacts to your system, right? There's AI agent capabilities of taking over a small workflow that, it probably isn't the most important part of your business, but it's very tedious part of your day, right? It's repeatable, it's redundant, and it probably just drains your brain cells more than anything else. How do you incorporate an AI agent to take over that task, right? And if it does, great. But now you're able to write more codes, write more instructions to have it do more things, right? I think this is going to be a really exciting future for us that we are moving into, and I think we will have many companies like Nvidia and Microsoft, Apple, these big giant companies. We'll see many more of these. But the reason I'm making a forest of these logos here is because I want you to think of what these companies are contributing to, and why they're spending so much money in these capabilities that they want to provide you as a service. And once they do, how do you incorporate these services into your daily life and into your daily operations, standard operations on a daily basis, or just your quarterly or your yearly? However you want to think about it, I want you to imagine what these companies will enable you to do, and how do you enable yourself to interact with the services and capabilities these organizations will provide to you. I love this quote, but it's a very difficult thing to do. Actually, is that we we have the need for us to focus on the whole forest, but at the same time, we still have to look at this tedious task, and work and improve on that tedious task in order to grow a capability from its infancy. So if you're interested on learning more about these capabilities, and how to dissect it, how to discover more of it, how to layer it, layer by layer approach, how to extract the best and leave the rest, and how to do interoperability, scalability, and sustainability, feel free to reach out to this community, because this community will enable you to ask those questions in live scenarios, as in, like, you have a use case, you have a scenario, and you're wondering how to use AI for that. Well, you could spend hours and hours researching it, and then come to us, or come to us, then go hours and hours of research, because that's what we will enable you to do, is ask the right question. And this smart AI community's high focus is to give you the frame, how to ask the questions in the most effective way, and how to incorporate your research and training by asking the right questions, so that way it leads you into the right path. So until next time, thank you so much for listening in, and we'll see you next time. Ciao.